Copyright in these lectures is either owned by the ANU or a third party who has licensed the ANU to use it. Students may use the recording for personal study only. No lecture may be communicated online, copied or shared without the prior permission of the ANU.
Okay, let's get started. So, I was preparing myself to come today to an empty room because quite often I've been teaching a long time, right? And over time I've discovered that the day an assignment's due, particularly if it's due just before the lecture, everyone's so exhausted that they don't come to the lecture. But you guys all came. That's awesome, right? That's awesome. Okay, well, that also serves as a reminder that if you didn't hand the assignment in, better head upstairs. I looked at as I walked down, I looked at the assignment box, and it's, so the people in the office have put a little paper sheet over the front so it's healed over, so you can't put anything in there. If you did forget, or if whatever, and you need to hand it in, just give it to the ladies in the office. I told them that, you know, if something's 5 minutes late, I genuinely don't really care, or 10 minutes late or whatever. I mean, it's, you know, we try to be sensible about these things. I know not everybody has that rule, but that's what I do. Okay, all right, so we head into the part of the course after the assignment. So now you can get your heads back into the regression space. By the way, I should mention that if you look at the project, and so you can't really start the second assignment yet. The second assignment is really all about time series, which we will cover in a chapter later. So if you're looking for something to do, my best advice would be you could think about starting the project now. And that would give you lots of time to do it. You should think of the project as being like double the size of a normal assignment. I mean, it literally is. Four pages for an assignment, 8 pages for the project. So it should take about double the time. However, having said that, the data sets are a little bit more complicated and getting into them is a little bit more painful, but not especially so. Now, what I will do, probably when I finish this chapter, is I will actually spend, as I did for the assignment, the first part of one of the lectures just talking you through the data sets for the project. So you have a choice of 2. And one of them, the data about the river otters, you probably have all the tools you need already to do it, okay? For the second one, which is about insurance, the tools are mainly regression style tools, and so we'll get those in the next few weeks. But of course, I know most of you have some experience of regression anyway. So you get to choose between those 2. I know I'll head it off at the pass. I always get a lot of questions. Which one should I choose? Again, depends what floats your boat. If you like furry creatures, otters are furry. You might like that one. It's pretty cute. If you're an actuarial student, insurance probably turns you on, so that one might be the one to go for. They're not especially different in terms of difficulty, so whichever one. The other thing you could be doing is looking for those graphics for the first part of the project, right, part A. Now the way that works is that part A is worth 10% and part B is worth 50 to make up a total of 60. And anyway, we'll talk more about that as the time draws nearer. So there's not nothing to do once the first assignment's done, but yeah, no, you can have a rest for a little bit and then you should get stuck into the project so that at the end it doesn't sort of hit you like everything at once. Okay, back to regression. All right, so we've been talking about these rats, and we've got X, which is blood loss, and we've got Y, which is hormone level, and we worked out that taking a log of Y will give you what looks to be a linear relationship between the vertical variable and the horizontal variable. Okay, so now we're down to fitting models. Okay, now we've talked yesterday, and I realised that yesterday was a bit of a mess because the projector kept going in and out, so I hope most of it made some sense. But we talked about ways in which you could estimate parameters in a linear regression, and we talked about three main ways. Okay, they were L1, which is absolute value error loss, so minimise absolute value of distance between points and line. Then the traditional one, which is least squares, minimise the squared error, the squared distance between points and the line. And then we had this third one, which we call the hybrid one, which we put down to a guy by the name of Peter Huber, which is essentially a weighted regression approach where in the middle it looks like least squares, but out beyond 1.34 standard deviations it looks like absolute values. Okay? So, with that in mind, I'm going to show you how to do all three for the data set that we have, and we'll show you the differences and how that all works. Okay? So, we've got X and log Y. So first of all, I'm going to show you L1. This is the absolute value fit. Okay? Now, to get the function L1 fit, which we talked about yesterday, you need a specific library in R, or a specific package, and that package is called L1Pack with a capital L. Okay? So before we started this morning, I did this. It's this afternoon, isn't it? Install.packages, quotes L1Pack. I did it beforehand because sometimes it takes forever to install a package and I didn't want to have you watch that. So I did that line. It's already installed, so I won't do it again. Then I did library L1Pack, okay, in order to load it. And then, like we always do, I said, okay, well, how does this thing work? And I used the help viewer, help L1 fit. And there it is, minimum absolute residual L1 regression. The syntax is pretty simple. L1 fit, you give it the X, you give it the Y. Intercept is true, so we're fitting a model with both an intercept and a slope, and the default is to do that, so intercept equals true as the default. So the basic structure is L1 fit XY, okay? Now, it's useful in this case to look at what the output is. The output is a list. It's got coefficients, so you get your intercept and your slope estimator. It's got residuals. And what it doesn't have anything around standard errors as part of that list output. Okay? So that's something to be aware of. Well, let's go ahead and fit it. So I'm going to go back up here and put the plot back on the page. I'm going to go model 1 equals L1 fit of X and log Y. Okay, that's going to fit the model. I'm going to do a summary of that so we can see what it gives you. And you can see the summary is not particularly helpful, but if I type model 1, you see the list that gets produced. Okay, so you've got residuals, you've got fitted values. Your intercept is estimated to be 0.442 and your slope is estimated to be 0.139. Okay? So those are the values that come out. And I can add that line to the plot, so I go AB line, model 1 dollars coefficients. Okay, and I better make it a nice colour. Let's make it red. Yes? Where would you like me to type? Oh, okay. Sure, I can do that. So let me, oh, by the way, you can go over here to history and it's all there. So rather than retype it all, I'm just going to see if I can copy it all out of there. Won't let me copy it. Oh, that's ridiculous. Oh, I can go to source. So you guys go over there. There we go. All good? All right. So that's my L1 fit line. Okay. Now, because L1 fit didn't include in the output anything about standard errors, I don't have standard errors for beta 0 hat and beta 1 hat from this output. Okay? There's a couple of reasons for that. L1 fitting does not produce nice, simple formulas for standard errors. And so calculating those is literally a pain in the backside. Or figuratively, probably not literally. Okay? So, you don't get those from the output. And this is a bit of a problem, right? Because normally we like to have standard errors in order to quantify how far from 0 our intercept is, or how far from 0 our slope is, for example, if we want to test against no regression and that kind of thing. So this is really the reason I don't use L1 fit ever. It's because you don't get those standard errors, and those standard errors are kind of helpful. Okay? So that's the line. We'll leave that there for the second. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the mass library. Okay, MASS. Okay. And then, in order to get my robust model using the Huber weights, I'm going to go model 2 equals RLM, and you give it log y tilde x. So the syntax is you give it the y variable, then a tilde, and then the x variable. This is called a model formula. Okay, and the basic function is RLM. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. So it produced an output. Okay, I can have a look at that output. If I just type model 2, it shows me the intercept was 0.4399, the slope was 0.141. And if I just scroll up just a little bit, I'll see that compares with 0.442, so it's very close, and 0.139. So out in the second decimal place, but broadly similar. And in fact, I'm going to add that line to my plot, AB line, model 2, $coef, colour equals, we'll make this one green. And it's very likely you won't see the difference. In fact, the green line will probably sit right on top of the red one. Let's see. Sort of, pretty close, right? So around here they're about the same. You can see the red line just sort of sneaking above the green line on this end, and the red line sneaking below the green line on that end. Okay? So almost identical. And then the final one, which is least squares. Let's go ahead and fit that. Least squares is built into base R, so I don't need to load any packages. I'm just going to say model 3 is LM log y tilde x. Okay, same structure. I'm going to look at model 3, and then I'm going to add the AB line just for. So I'll run all this in a second. What's a nice colour? Blue. I'm stuck in the primary colours. Lack of imagination on a Wednesday. So there we go. Model 3's fit. Intercept is 0.432. Again, very close compared to 0.439, compared to 0.442. So you can see there is some difference, but not much. The slope's quite different, 0.138 versus 0.141, and the other one was 0.139, I think, from memory. So this gives you a slightly different slope again. And if I add the line to the plot, which is in blue, you'll see it's a bit different again. but it seems to run consistently underneath both of those other lines, right? You can see it's clearly underneath at the top part of the graph. Down here you can see it's sort of covering the green line, but it's underneath the red one. And again, I know you've got to have eagle eyes to see this, but the differences are really minor, but they are there. Okay? Now, I can also, with both RLM and LM, I can get a model summary. If I type summary of model 2, this is the RLM fit, I get this. And you can see with RLM, I get standard errors. This is again because in the middle where this thing looks like least squares, it's nice and smooth, so standard errors are relatively easy to calculate. Not trivial, but relatively easy, so it does that. And again, I get t-values here, okay? I also get an estimate of the residual standard error. And I can also do a summary of model 3, and you'll see they're similar, tiny bit different. Okay, 0.432, 0.138, 0.6166 compared with, and we have to scroll back up to see the other ones. So the standard error is a bit smaller, 0.67, and these are mildly different. So those are all the three different fitting methods. Okay. And look, most of you are probably sitting there going, why did I come today? I'm handing my assignment in and this is dull, right? They're all the bloody same. And why teach us 3 things that are all the same? And the answer is, well, they're all the same in this case, roughly speaking, because this is well-behaved data. This data doesn't have massive outliers or difficult points, okay? And so remember that L1 and RLM are basically hedges against having weird points that contaminate your model. Well, when you don't have weird points, least squares works fine. And, if something's been around for 300 years, it probably better work fine most of the time, right? Because if it doesn't, you've got a problem. So they're not much different in this particular case, okay? But when you have outliers, you can see some relatively significant differences. And remember that even very small differences might make quite a difference when you want to do some mild prediction off the edge of the data, right? But depending on the scale of the y-axis, it might make a big difference. Remember, our y-axis here is on the log scale, right? So small changes on the log scale can be very significant changes on the original scale. Okay, and by way of example, you probably know that they measure earthquakes using something called the Richter scale. That's a logarithmic scale. And so you might wonder, gee, how come an earthquake that's 6.9 is so much less destructive than an earthquake that's 7? And the answer is when you exponentiate that, because the log scale, you multiply the damage by a large amount, right? So the same sort of thing can happen with this kind of thing. And so these what appear to be really small differences on the log scale might actually have significant impact on prediction down the track as well. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, so let's have a look at the way outliers and influential points might mess around with these different fitting methods. I think that's worth looking at. And to do that, rather than, we can use this data, but what we're going to do is we're going to do something with this rat, the one that's down here, okay? Because he's already a bit of an outlier, but he wasn't enough of an outlier to cause a significant trouble, okay? So let's find out which rat that is. So I'm going to go identify x and log y. Okay, so as soon as I do that, you'll notice I don't get the cursor back and my mouse changes to a little crosshairs over here. I click this guy, bang, okay, then I hit escape to finish. That's rat number 71. That's rat number 71. So let's have a look at X71. That rat had a blood loss of 14.9, that looks right. Let's have a look at log Y. I hear sirens. 71.182, which is low, right? Which is low. All right, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to change that wrap. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable z, which is log y, because it's going to be easiest to do it for that. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, look, I think that rat had an incorrect y value. Let's give it a y value that's different and see what happens, okay? So I'm going to go z71 equals, and we're going to make it, well, I can't make it too much lower because that's hormone level. We're going to flip it to the other side and we're going to make it a lot higher, okay? So we're going to go z71 is 100. Okay, now, does that make any sense? Probably not, okay? And outliers can exist for two different reasons, or more than two typically, but these are the two that might often happen. One is keyboard error, right? You're typing in the data, your fingers get sloppy, and suddenly there's an extra zero on the end. Oh no, right? And I think as we learned did we do this one yet? I'll have to show you a cool thing which demonstrates utterly why proofreading is pointless, right? I'll show you that. I'll show you that before the end of today. Why proofreading is pointless. Oh, what the heck, I'll show you now. Because it's good fun, and you're all looking a bit bored, and I get that. So this is just so we're going to have a fun break just for a second. What's this thing called? This is a cool web page, by the way. I'll show you a couple of these, because if we're going to have a fun break, we might as well have a lot of fun. Okay. Where is it? Where is it? This one here. It'll come up eventually, can't it? Okay, you want to read this paragraph? Let's go. I'll read it out loud. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. Now, most of you could probably read that about the same as I could read it, right? Yeah? Every single word has problems, and I mean big problems. This is someone, you've heard about that thing, 100 monkeys typing Shakespeare? A monkey typed this, let's be clear. Now, by the way, this is fake news. This is actually fake news. There was no such research done at Cambridge University, and what the paragraph actually says is wrong. But humans are very good at putting things into a context that's familiar, and so if you see the words you want to see, basically, and you have to mangle them pretty badly before you fail to do that. This is exactly why proofreading's so hard. Because as you read back something that you typed, guess what? You see what you think you typed, or what you wanted to type, and that's what happens, right? So if you're entering data, and there are people whose entire lives are about entering data, it's really no wonder that you have mistakes in there. Usually they're transpositions, two numbers switched, or additional characters, right? So that's cool. That's a cool example of why proofreading is so futile. Another example of a similar concept is, where's this one? There's a few of them here. While I'm in here, I'll show you a couple of things. It's pretty cool. I can't see that one. But anyway, I'll show you this one. A couple of these will blow your mind. So, you know, when you go home this evening, or you call your parents and they ask you, why am I paying for you to go to university? You can say, well, I had my mind blown today. And they'll go, oh, okay, that's worth it. Okay. This is an example of how colour perception is so dependent on the colours that are around something. So what we've got two figures here, and you're looking at the middle, the junction figure, so that little piece that's in the middle. So what colour's the one on the left? Purpley grey, yeah. Colour's the one on the right? Yellow, right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to fade away everything else, leave them both unchanged. They're both grey, okay. Your entire perception is based on, you can see they actually stay grey until the other stuff locks in, and then you can't unsee it. Colour perception is much more difficult than you think. You so much use surrounding colours to dictate what you see. Okay, so that's a cool one. That's a cool one. What's another good one? Oh, this is cool. What the hell? Oh, I don't have flash. I can't show you. It's a pity. It's too cool for school. Okay, these two we should talk about once we start talking about multiple regression. But let's start talking about them. We'll talk about them now, and then I'll look at them later. So this is the spinning ballerina. You might have seen this in a different form. Oh, we got voice with it. Let's tell them to shut up. So I've got a spinning ballerina. Which way is she spinning? Is she spinning clockwise or is she spinning counterclockwise? So who thinks she's spinning clockwise? Okay, so clockwise would be that way. Yeah. Okay, who sees her spinning counterclockwise? Yeah, the other half of you, right? The other half of you. So why is that? Why is that? Anyone tell me? Well, let me ask you a leading question. How many dimensions is that picture in? 2. It's on a screen. Screens are 2-dimensional, right? So the shadow picture is in 2 dimensions. It has to be. Okay? Now, this one on the right on this occasion is in 3 dimensions, you think, but that's because they've used shading to give depth. Okay? But the middle one, the silhouette, there's no depth. There's no depth. So guess what your brain does? It makes shit up. Right? Yeah, really, right? You want to see her spinning. And so your brain makes up enough extra information, in this case a whole dimension's worth of extra information, so that you see her spinning in a particular direction. Now, there's some people, most people will see her spinning in either one direction or the other, and that's it. There are some people, there'd be some people probably in this room, who can see her doing either, can switch it. Yeah, there'll be a few. There's always a few. These people have much more plastic minds than I do. I can only ever see her spin clockwise, which is interesting, isn't it? The reason this is relevant for us, apart from it being cool and fun and all that, is that one of the problems we're going to have in data analysis is we're very often going to be encountering high-dimensional data, and all of our viewing surfaces are 2-dimensional. And so a lot of the stuff we do in high dimensions involves projections onto 2 dimensions. So you have immediate loss of dimension, which is exactly what's going on in this silhouette. And you can see that if you introduce dynamic effects in that context, you can actually induce an optical illusion. So we are going to spend a little bit of time later in the course talking about optical illusions, because they're actually relevant in terms of what people see, right? See, you probably all arrived at this class at the start of the semester believing something that's probably not true. And that thing is that what you see is what everybody else sees. Everybody thinks that everyone sees what they see, right? That isn't true. You just saw it in action then. Half the class saw one thing and the other half of the class saw the other thing, and we could fight about it, right? Because there'd be people who are going, no, she's spinning clockwise, and I'll tell you why. And of course there's no good reason why, except that's how I see it, right? And that's kind of cool. So that's a cool one. This one's just freaky. I'll show you one more. This one's just freaky. Okay. It's a mask, so you've got to imagine a mask that someone's got over their face. So it's like a hollow mask. Okay, let's have a look. Show us the picture. Come on. Yes, we get it. It's got a title. Starring Tom Hanks. No, there we go. Okay, so it's a mask. You can see it's a mask. It's rotating. We're going to see the back of the mask, the back of the mask. Uh-oh. You know why? You're so used to looking at the fronts of people's faces. You don't look inside people's heads. You don't know what that's like. And you can't stop yourself having that flip back. You want to stop yourself. You're sitting there going, I want to see the inside. But then as soon as it turns to a certain point, oh, it's back on the outside. What's going on? Again, It's 2D, folks. It's 2D, right? So you're making up the stuff that's in the third dimension. And the stuff your brain readily makes up is the face going frontwards. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, all right. So there we go. That's a little fun break. I can't even remember why we did that. Oh yeah, we did it because proofreading's hard. Right, okay. All right, back to the rats, no more fun. No more fun. Okay, so I'm going to, actually what I'm going to do is y71 equals e to the 100. Okay, I'm just going to do that so that I can use my code from before. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to plot, I'll just do the plot again, plot x and log y. Okay, so there's my data now. So you can see these guys all down here, and then we've got that hideous one way up there. Okay, x versus log y. That's a long way further than I probably meant it to go, but let's see what the different models do. Okay. That's what L1 fit does. L1 fit along here, line really doesn't move, that point doesn't have much of an effect at all. Okay, let's see what RLM does. Okay, there's the green line, basically went right on top of the red line. Let's see what least squares does. That line's different. Okay? Now, here's a way to think about how data operates. What you're trying to do when you fit a straight line is you're trying to minimise some aggregated distance of points from the line. Now, in order to do that, every distance has a contribution. And that's like every single point calling to the line, come through me, come through me. Because if the line went through every point, the aggregated distance would be 0. So they're all trying to pull the line towards themselves. Now when you have an outlier, which is a point like this, okay, it's a big outlier, right? Let's be clear, it's a big outlier. It's able to pull that line using least squares because the contribution that's made to distance is squared. It's so far from the line that its contribution is massive. Okay, and so it's able to lever that line up a little bit in order to minimise the overall distance. But it can't lever it up too much because all of these points are calling out come through me as well, and so it's a hard task for it to pull that line up, but it does it. And it'll do it more and more the further away that is. Okay, so that's your classic outlier. That's your classic outlier. Classic outliers are characterised by having y values or vertical values that are very different to the vertical values of all the other points. Okay? So that's a classic outlier. Now I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to move the point again, but I'm going to put it back to where it was to start with. So, how am I going to do that? Because I didn't keep track of where it was. Its height was about, I forget, I'll have to go back to my original data. Hang on 1 second.
Log of height was 0.1823.
Was 0.1?
82321.
Oh, you guys have computers with you. And you haven't been, have you been typing my commands in that computer? No? Just type Y71, tell me what it is. Because your Y will be the right one.
Oh no, I'm going to be...
You've got different data. Oh, well, that's no fun at all. All right, don't worry. Simple way to do it is RMY, right, so remove Y completely. This is a pickle you can get into in an assignment, by the way, where you do something bad to the data and then you can't get it back, so you have to basically reread it in. So let's reread the original data in. Okay, there we go. Plot x and log y. Let's do that again. There's the original data. We're back to normal. Okay, very good. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same rat, and I'm going to get its x value really, really wrong. Okay, so its x value was about 14.9, and this time I'm going to move its x value way away from the others. I'm going to have another typo, right? So x71 was 14.9, now x71 is going to equal 1014.9. It's either a sticky keyboard or I've got heavy fingers. We don't know. That's one of the problems that occurred. Plot x, y, x and log y. So let's put the data back there. So, data set, and then this is my hideous error over here. Okay? All right, let's go and do these different models again and see what happens. Model 1 is this. Put the line in. That's with L1 fit. That's with L1 fit. All right, what about L2? Sorry, RLM. Let's do that one. Not quite as bad, but still pretty bad. And Model 3 does that. Okay, so this is an example of what's called leverage. Okay, let me tell you why it happens. It happens because, and I made this a really extreme, I guess, case. I've put this point here so far away from the others in the x direction that if I ignored that point, then that point's not there, and I fit a line, it would go basically straight up, exit the roof, okay? It'd probably be on the moon before it got over to here, okay? Now, least squares says minimise the sum of squared distances. If that line, the one that sort of goes more or less shooting straight up vertically, right, if that was the correct line, the distance contribution from this point over here would be the square of a really, really big number. Okay? And least squares would say, oh, that's too big. In fact, any of these algorithms would say that. They're all trying to minimise distance. So what they do is they put the line right through this point, or close to this point, over here, okay? Because they commit no distance here, and yeah, there's a bunch of distance being accumulated over here, but none of it's extreme, right? These are numbers between 0 and 4. The biggest contribution is going to be 4 squared, 16. Even if you've got 92 points, right? Let's say 100 points. That's a total squared distance of 1600, okay? Imagine this line, if it went straight up here, imagine the distance of that line, the one that goes straight up from this point when it gets over to, because it's angled a little bit, when it gets over here. How big is that going to be? Well, like I said, it might happen on the moon. That's a long way. And what's the square of the distance to the moon? This is where Wikipedia comes in useful. You look that up, right? It's bigger than 1600 in whatever units you care about, okay? The moon's a long way away. So, influence and leverage are this concept of, we've got a fitting method that says, I want to minimise distance overall. If there's a point over here with whose x value is a long way from the rest of the data, then the only way to minimise that distance is actually to pull the line more or less through that point, okay, and thereby avoid a massive distance contribution. And the compromise is that you get much smaller but significant distance contributions from all the other points. So that's a point that's got high leverage. So, if you've got two-dimensional data, that's what we've got here, points that have y values that are a long way away from the model, they're outliers. And that's what we call them, outliers. Okay? By the way, for many years I've noticed that people call outliers outliners. There's no N. Okay? Outliers. O-U-T-L-I-E-R-S. right? Not out-and-out liars like presidents of certain countries, outliers, okay? If I do, see, here's what I figure, right? I know that 5 years from now, everything you've done at university you will have forgotten, right? Because that's just the way life is. So if I can correct some things that make you look smart instead of dumb, then I'm on a winner. Right, so if you're in a meeting, you know, some big executive meeting at a company and you say outliners, they're going to say, University of Canberra, right? No, they're going to say, I didn't say that. Actually, it's on the, oh no, it's on the recording. No. They're going to say ANU, right? You go, yeah, that's ANU, like in outliners, right? Yeah. So outliers, okay? Outliers have Y values that are very different to the rest of the data. Points of high leverage have X values that are very different to the rest of the data. And it's that X value being different that causes that leverage, literally leverage, of the fitted line from what you know it should be to levering it right around to more or less go through this point. Now, one of the things you'll have noticed is that L1 fit copes well with outliers. It more or less ignores them, right? RLM ignores them too, pretty much. Least squares kind of gets dragged, okay? Influential points, none of them work, right? So using robust fitting methods will not necessarily help you against points of high leverage. Now, one more thing I have to tell you about points of high leverage. Just because its X value is a long way away from the rest of the data doesn't mean it has to have high influence. And I'll show you why, okay? So I'm going to go back again to my original data. So I'm going to go back to the original Y. Where is it? There it is. There's my original Y. I'm going to go plot X log Y. Okay. All right. There's... Oh, what? I changed X. Ah, thank you. I swear, you know, when you're teaching a class, you realise you're not really that smart at all. It's the way it is. Huh? Okay, let's do that again. Plot X and log Y, there we go. Okay, I'm going to go AB line, we'll use model 2 or whatever. Okay, something else. Oh, yes, good one, Michael. He's losing it. Let's refit model 2 using the original X and the original Y. And here we go. Plot X log Y, AB line model 2. There we go. That's it. Okay, now I'm going to take that bottom point there, this rat here, and I'm going to make its X really, really big again, like I did before. So I'm going to go X71 equals, what did I have? 1,004, whoops. X71 equals 1,014, that'll do. Okay, so a hideous typo. But now I'm going to go Y71 equals model $2 coef plus model $1 coef, so get the intercept, plus model $2 coef 2, that's the slope, times 1114. Okay? Going to do that. Sorry, I need it to be e to that, because I'm going to take logs of that y, aren't I? Exp of that. Okay, and if I plot x and log y now, you get that, right? There's your data, and there's that wrong point. And now, yes, if I fit all three, they're all going to go through that point up there, but they're also going to go through all these down here, right? Because that point, it has a different x value to the rest, so it does have high leverage, but it's not going to change the model because it actually sits on the fitted model. We know that. Okay, it's easy to show. If I fit model 2 now, and I AB line it, you can see fits here and fits there. You're going, I don't believe it fits down there, because that's just a big black blob. How do I know what's going on down there? How do I know? I don't trust you. You look shifty. Huh? So let's blow it up. Let's look. Let's go between 0 and 20 here and 0 and 4 here. So let's do our plot again. Plot x and log y. X lim equals c, 0, 20. Y lim equals c, 0, 4. Okay, that's the data we had before, right? But that other point's not on this plot anymore. I've limited the axes. If I go and put that AB line back, of course it goes right through the middle, right? It's the same line. So leverage on its own, the fact that a data point has a very different x value to all the others, does not necessarily change the model if the point has the same relationship with y as it started with. So leverage is a bit of a tricky concept. And so we now have these two kinds of points that are unusual. We have outliers. These are points that are a long way from the fitted model. We have points of high leverage, which are actually on the fitted model, typically, but are a long way from what you think the true relationship is. And then you have these points that are a long way away from the rest of the data, but which actually conform to the model you had in the first place. And there's nothing wrong with them. They could just simply be a very, very, very large rat, right? Because you've taken 1,114 blood loss. That's a big rat. Okay. All right, so that's a bit about unusual data points. Okay, now, where are we? Well, let me tell you what I recommend, okay? I think as a matter of best practice, what you should be doing when you fit models is using RLM, because it gives you that sort of first level protection against outliers, all right? And so I think that's kind of best practice. Having said that, you know, next year when you're out in the real world and the only tool you have at your disposal is Excel, R's free by the way, you could tell your boss, R's free. But anyway, you have Excel on your desk and that's all your boss will let you install, then you'll be using least squares, right? Okay? So if you're using least squares, I would encourage you to check for outliers first. Generally speaking, if they're mild, they won't make too much difference. But, as you can see, you can make them make a difference if they're egregious. And if you have big errors, you know, things that you probably should spot anyway, then least squares is going to tend to follow those around. Okay, so that's my advice. Now, the last thing to talk about in this particular chapter is, and we'll do a tiny bit today and then we'll start to pick it up on Monday, is to do what are called diagnostics. Now, diagnostics are really all about the question of, I fit a model and now I want to know, are the assumptions that I made in order to fit that model credible? So remember, we talked about this yesterday. There are 3 assumptions you make when you fit a simple linear regression. You are assuming that the data follows a linear pattern. That's assumption 1. That's the most important. I'm going to number them in order of importance, right? The second assumption you make is that the errors have constant variance. And the third assumption you make is that the errors are normally distributed. Okay? Now, let me talk about the relative importance of these 3 in the 2 minutes I have today. If the pattern you see is not linear, then you are fitting the wrong model. That's it. And that's just as wrong as you can be. Everything you do after that will be wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Right? So that clearly is the most important assumption, because if you fit the wrong model, then your predictions will be wrong, your theory will be wrong, everything will be wrong. Okay? So that's job 1. Fit a linear model if it looks linear. And if it doesn't look linear, do something else. Okay? Bottom line. The second assumption, your variance of your errors is constant. That is not as important because you will still fit a pretty good model even if the residuals go from being skinny at one end to being flared out at the other. The line will still go through the middle. The reason that you don't want to have that happen is because your predictions will be bad where the variance is high, and they'll be better when the variance is good and small. And so you want your predictions to be equally reliable no matter what. So that's why the constant variance assumption matters. Last one, why do we care that the errors are normal?